Hi everyone, I am Leena Kela. I'm performance artist and researcher and also the curator of performance art. I mainly work in Turku, not here in the capital area, and I've been working with performance art almost 25 years now, so already quite a long time. And my story goes that how I became familiar with performance art was actually a pure coincidence. I was thinking that, as a young person, I was thinking that I could study photography, and quite early I turned the camera around and started to perform for the camera. And this was like really, I was starting just to learn about the photography and how the camera works. But what I was actually interested in was performing for the camera. And this is a bit funny story that I kind of coincidentally went to visit my friend in Turku and met a teacher who had just started performance art education at the Arts Academy. And he said like, hey, you should apply to study with us. And it's a course called Crossing Borders in Performing Arts. And we do performance art. And I was like, I don't know what it is, but sounds quite interesting. I applied, I got in, and that was first time when I actually started to understand the art form and started to learn it by exploring and doing. Not maybe so much interested in performing for live audience, but rather performing for camera. How do I understand performance art? Is, for me, it's very much about the dialogue between the body, the performing person, and then objects, materials, the surrounding. So for me, it's this interaction, what happens when we make art with our own existence, our own body, and then with other creatures, other objects, other materials, other beings, if you call them so. So what happens in this dialogue, in this interaction? And performance art doesn't always happen in front of the live audience, which, even though it's kind of part of the definition that there is this element of liveness, but I think that it's also, the liveness can happen in front of the camera. So it can be photographed or videoed, and then still the kind of the element of performance art is there if it's the intention, if it's the way of like approaching the performance there. So what differs it from other performing arts, the forms of performing arts like theater or dance, is, at least for me, that it comes more from the visual arts, from visual arts way of thinking, and the kind of the relation of creating the situation or creating the space or creating this, what I said about this interaction with other elements. So performance art can also be like an installation where as much as I'm performing here, also the chair that or the sofa I'm sitting on is part of this situation of a performance. So I think that maybe the way, maybe there are kind of a lot that overlaps with, let's say, theater or movement-based practices like dance. So you can come across with forms of performance art that are very much leaning towards the other performing arts forms. But this is now actually also part of my research question, like there is a language, like what is a language of performance art that we still recognize, that differs it or makes it kind of clear for us that we are watching performance art. If you think about, let's say, performance in terms of like everyday activity, like me being me and then acting as a kind of like very complex way of like creating an action or performing a character. So if this is the me at home and this is the kind of the theater stage, complex play and the role in it, performance art is maybe more here in this kind of everydayness, and the performativity of the artist is closer to their everyday way of being. I've been also working a lot with performers who are not artists as their practice, and I think performance art is especially great form of like finding the performer from yourself, from the way how you are, how you behave, how you do things. It's a lot about doing instead of like acting or performing. So approaching performance art as a way of doing and making is a great way of like starting to develop your own performance practice or performance persona, if you're interested in that. So approaching it as kind of making, doing, action is a quite accessible way of like becoming or starting to explore with performance. In my own performance work, I usually start by exploring what is around me. I think I really rarely start to develop performance work before I know where it's coming to. So that's leading me that I know that I'm making a work, let's say, to a gallery space there or some park in another place. So I start to think, to develop the idea from that particular place. And I usually work with objects and materials that are quite everyday. I'm interested in this everydayness and the possibilities of like exploring something that is quite familiar and finding new ways of like working with those materials. Let's say I've been making a lot of works with, I don't know if it's an everyday object, but it's an object made of everyday material, like a demonstration sign made of cardboard, or emergency blanket. It's kind of everyday object because you can find it from the first aid kit, but maybe you otherwise don't play with that so much. I've been making work about or with coffee, or like taking one material and exploring like the various possibilities that material or object can do with me, and also not only that, what are the different ways of working with that I can invent, but rather also that what does the object or material do to me? So what is that is coming back to me, and then what is happening in this meeting and interaction. And sometimes I get surprised. In these performances and actions, I create the idea that that directs me is a kind of central element. At some point I thought, or kind of phrased, that performance art is art of ideas. That idea comes first, and then that starts to define the kind of its form, let's say that way. So I always, even though I say like I look for I explore the site, and I look for what's there and who could I perform with as materials and objects, still the kind of the core is the idea, why do I start to look for something? So in the recent years, I've been especially working with not a question, but like with this larger concept of ecological crisis. I'm trying to find a word of this, like it's not the theme, because it's a condition we live in. So from the condition of ecological crisis, what are the different questions that emerge from that, and how could I think about those questions by making work in a form of performance art? and how much of that is like clear as a message that I try to talk to the audience about. I think that's sometimes that's much more clear than other times, but for me there's always the intention comes from these questions or from these puzzles or from these kind of concerns that I have, and then it's up to the audience for them to interpret what they see there. So at the Sidewalk project, the second edition, now in 2025, I will be giving a lecture on performance scores. So we will be approaching performance art from the perspective of Fluxus. Fluxus is a historical one form of performance art where artists write scores, event scores for themselves, but also to be shared with others so that others can perform their scores, interpret them in the way they want. So this is a way of like writing for performance. So thinking about how the writing can initiate action. So there will be very different ways of exploring with this script writing, but mainly it's like a short form of a written score that can direct the action in the performance art. So in this lecture, we will be looking at the historical, like the old Fluxus scores, but then you will be also writing scores for yourself and the others. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we end up trying them out too.